And ladies and gentlemen, the next session is building a military industrial space complex for India, which examines precisely this imperative. A global space powers have thrived through tightly integrated military industry academia ecosystems. This defining decade for India demands deeper collaboration, stronger domestic supply chains, sustained R&D partnerships, scaled indigenous manufacturing, and strategic push forward towards resilient and self-reliant space capabilities. This session will examine how India can strengthen industry, government, academia collaboration, secure domestic supply chains, foster sustained R&D partnerships, scale indigenous manufacturing, and build strategic authorities, autonomy, and resilience across its space capabilities. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to announce that this session is organized in partnership with XDLINX, a company actively contributing to India's emerging defense space industrial framework. And we thank XDLINX for supporting this important dialogue on strengthening indigenous capability and industrial depth. And to guide this critical discussion, we have with us Mr. Sandeep Unnithan, Consulting Editor at India Today. Let's put our hands together to welcome Sir on the stage, who's a respected defense and strategic affairs journalist, has closely tracked India's military modernization, defense reforms, and space security developments. His understanding of the intersection between policy, procurement, and operational capability makes him ideally suited to moderate this session. Inviting all our eminent panelists, Dr. Akhil Rao, who's the Chief Economist at Rational Futures and former Acting Chief Economist at NASA. Warm welcome to you, sir. Dr. Rao brings a global perspective on space economics, industrial scaling, sustainability models, and how nations structure long-term space industrial growth. We invite Colonel Anurag Awasthi, retired CEO, Escape Velocity MediaWorks. A former military officer and a strategic communicator, Colonel Awasthi offers insight into defense industry integration, operational requirements, and strategic ecosystem building. We invite Mr. Rupesh G, CEO, XDLINX. Representing the session partner, Mr. Rupesh brings entrepreneurial perspective on indigenous systems, development, advanced engineering, and strengthening India's domestic defense space supply chains. Inviting Mr. Ram K. Aluru, CEO, Honest Cryogenics, who's a leader in advanced cryogenic technologies, a critical enabler for propulsion systems and high-performance space missions. Mr. Aluru brings expertise in deep tech manufacturing and industrial capability building. And for the keynote address, we invite Dr. Vinod Kumar, Director Promotion, Directorate, Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center INSPACe. At the forefront of enabling private participation in India's space sector, Dr. Kumar has played a pivotal role in creating regulatory pathways, fostering industry partnerships, and accelerating the transformation of India's commercial and strategic space ecosystem. And before we invite Dr. Kumar for his keynote address, we would request Dr. Vinod Kumar, INSPACe, to kindly release a space curriculum by Space Kids, and also to present a certificate to Ms. Srimati Kesan. So we can do it here only. So ladies and gentlemen, Mission Shakti Sat is a global space initiative empowering 12,000 girls from 108 countries through a structured curriculum, technical learning, and hands-on satellite building, launching, and data retrieval. The certification can be considered a significant academic milestone reflecting the quality validation and structured framework. The first of its kind dedicated space education curriculum for high school students in the world, 7,000 girls across 108 countries are already accessing the curriculum through Zoho platform, and this will further be considered for a micro diploma through Ministry of Skill Development. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for doing the honors. And I would request you, sir, to kindly present a certificate to Ms. Srimati Kesan. May I invite ma'am to kindly come up on the stage. There. Thank you, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for Mission Shakti Set, a wonderful initiative promoting girls and girl child in space education, giving them that extra push. Thank you, ma'am, for this wonderful initiative. And let's put our hands together once again for Dr. Vinod Kumar and Ms. Srimati Kesan. Thank you, Dr. Kumar, for unveiling that wonderful initiative. And may I now invite Dr. Vinod Kumar to kindly set the strategic context for the session as the keynote address, after which I would request our moderator of this session, Mr. Sandeep Unnithan, to kindly take over the proceedings with a time duration session closing by 4:15. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. First of all, let me thank organizers of this from SIA-INDIA, Chairman SIA, Director General SIA, for giving this platform to hand over the much-awaited certificate for the curriculum developed by SpaceKit India for the girl children from 111 countries. So we have been working it, reviewing it for last around 6 months, and finally it has come to a good shape and we have released it. We wish all the best for her to take the space education around the world, especially to the girl child. This is a small contribution which we could do for the same, and that is our responsibility. Thank you once again for the SIA management for agreeing in a very small notice to accommodate this. And I must thank for this keynote address, but after that I have to leave for the airport, so I will leave the panel in between. Sorry for that also. So friends, this is a very interesting panel on military industrial space complex in India. It's really a sovereign necessity. Why we should work on this? I'll learn what has been happening. As you all know here, there is a dramatic paradigm shift in India's space research or development since 2020, from the four walls of government to the involvement of any individuals, Indian citizen in the space activities. Likewise, space for exploration to the space for strategic resilience. So this is our necessity in today's world. Military needs precision. They need to strike with a precision like we have done in Operation Sindoor. Likewise, in commercial space, if you see, agriculture also needs precision agriculture. They need to find the properties of a plant from the space and tell the properties of it, like what kind of disease is there, what kind of pesticide can be done, when it is required. So everything needs precision. I will be speaking from the commercial perspective in this conclave, but it doesn't make difference whether it is civil or commercial purpose, but yes, precision is necessary, only payload changes. So friends, as you know, INSPACe was formed in 2020, but we are operational in June 2022. Since then, what all we have done? The government act as an enabler of private system or its people. We have brought out the Indian space policy, clearly outlining the role of each stakeholder, like ISRO, INSPACe, New Space India Limited, and our new partner, non-government entities. We have laid out the decadal vision and strategy for commercial space. We aspire from 2% of global space economy to around 8% of global space economy. So which is around $8.4 billion to $44 billion. That is commercial part only. Defense parts may be double of this, which we hope so it will come in near future. So not only this, we have just not brought out the policy, we have identified the areas and doing for the demand creation in the nation, along with our state governments as well as the central government ministries, where we are conducting the space awareness workshop. We have worked out the certain schemes for them, like use case demonstration with some kind of assurance from the department to give the order. So what all verticals in space has been working? I will divide it in 7 parts quickly to define what all sectors we have been working. The one has been the policy. We have released the policy, Indian space policy and foreign direct investment policy. Very clearly outlining that earlier it was an administrative route, now there is an automatic route and plus administrative route as well. And our upper cap is 100%. If you see the subsystem manufacturing, 100% automatic route. Automatic route means directly you inform RBI and INSPACe and start working. No administration approval is required. In satellite manufacturing, 74% is automatic route. Beyond that is also possible if there is a technology addition to the India's space program. Likewise, in launch vehicle, because of strategic reason, 49% is the automatic route. Beyond that is also possible. The second very important is access to technology, access to infrastructure. Third, access to funding. These are the very important parameters. No private player can invest so much in technology, infrastructure. So what we have come out? Any infrastructure within the Department of Space premises is available for the use by any private company. We have been working on this. Over 100 technologies from 2022 onwards we have transferred to the private companies and much more are in offering. Access to funding is very important aspect. We have 1,000 crore VC fund is operationalized. Soon some companies will be identified. 500 crore technology adoption fund has been already operationalized and 3 companies will be announced shortly. Another notable scheme is seed fund scheme, which we have been working, and 7 are disbursed and 4 are getting disbursed shortly. So 11 are already done, and during the AI Impact Summit, we have around 6 crore more to work on the cutting edge technologies. That is the necessity of today. The another thing is the capacity building. We have designed 12 courses covering each aspect of space sector, including the upstream, downstream, midstream, extensively, and entrepreneurship in space, entrepreneurship development in space sector, to the space economy, policy, etc. Presently, if you see, as we sit here, 3 courses are running parallelly. One is Bangalore on space system cybersecurity. One is in Noida, that is on media strategy for space sector, communicating with media. Third is immersion program at Ahmedabad. So we are scaling all these activities in much bigger way in coming time. The another aspect is the preparing next generation for taking the space activities. We designed Space Tech BTech minor syllabus. I was very surprised. I was working with around 14-15 educational institutions and heading National Committee for Adoption of Space Tech. But when we announced a Antariksh Prayogshala Space Labs scheme, 58 educational institutions have applied for the Space Lab to it. There are various IITs, Tier 2 colleges, Tier 3 colleges. The primary requirement is they should have been teaching the space education. It means there are thousands of entrepreneurs, scientists, engineers are already studying space technology in India. Very happy to tell this Space Lab scheme has bring us to very good understanding what kind of ecosystem in the country is developing. We have internship scheme where 480 interns we have placed in one announcement. The second announcement is going on. Friends, our modern rocketry and Kansai satellite competition has gone wide accolades. We are announcing one more edition next month, wherein in the last edition I have been given to inform 100% placement they are getting with a very good pay packages. The another vertical, we are of course a space regulator, authorizing the private companies and ISRO also to take up, to launch the satellite. That is our role. Additionally, we have the expert at our payroll. They are available for all of you to get consult. They are 3 to 4 decades of experience in space sector in ISRO. They are available for a consultation. Based on the success of this scheme, we are increasing number of experts, residence experts, to be available for your consultation. So friends, this kind of initiative which we have been carrying out, so military industrial space complex should have 3 pillars for operationalizing. To come in the major area is supply chain management and decoupling, deploying and resilience of supply chains is very, very important. We have carried out a study on supply chain mapping for satellite system. We will carry out for launch vehicle and others also. So that is the one thing where it should be in-house. Means everything should be made in India. We see in satellite system 80 to 90% we import. What is the use? Under India Semiconductor Mission, we are working with MITI, wherein we have taken the requirement from our private friends and informed that, and we are working in that direction also. The second major requirement is R&D. Presently, R&D at academic institutions goes paper published over. This is not the thing. We have seen many 600 plus R&D developed under ISRO Response program are 90% of that is not used. They are available for, they are developed up to certain level they have gone, maybe TRL 3, 4 or whatever it is, but it is stuck there. We need to bring it. Such kind of R&D should be developed. It should go to lab to launch. Means they should not remain in the book, they should be used because they have already gone so much review process and they have been developed but not being used further. The third is of course indigenous manufacturing and scaling in this. So what I suggest here is the triple helix model where government act as a long-term vision that provides, they de-risk the private investment at up to certain extent we have started doing. Industry, they should drive agility, cost efficiency of course is there. Academia, they should solve the fundamental problem. They should not remain in the lab or books. They should come out to the POC and further commercialization. That is very, very important in today's age, new space age. Very important scheme is along this complexes which have been discussed here, we are working with the state government. We are very happy to tell half a dozen state governments in India has come out their own space policy and space manufacturing cluster. We have signed MOU with 3 governments, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. And as you know that each government has set aside the budget and what all they will do. So we should integrate all these things to maintain a resilient supply chain in the country. Not only these 3, very happy to tell Andhra Pradesh has come out with its policy. Madhya Pradesh has come out with its own policy. Assam government has announced its satellite also, Assam Sat. You see the ecosystem in the country is developing all around. Each state is in forward. One day I had a discussion with Honorable CM of Uttar Pradesh. He told that how we can predict the lightning strikes. We are praying so much. Why we can't use the space? He had discussion with Secretary Ross, and I am very happy to tell our private companies are also involved that to develop a satellite to predict the lightning in the country. So there are many more things to discuss to combine the strategies in military domain to the civilian domain to each aspect. There are a lot more things to do here. Thank you very much for this. These are my thoughts on this. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the time once more given by our SIA friends and its associate partners. Namaste, Jai Hind.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, as Dr. Vinod Kumar said he has to leave, can I request our moderator of this session to do the honors of presenting a memento, a token of gratitude to Dr. Vinod Kumar. Can we have the memento on the stage, please? Thank you. And before Dr. Vinod Kumar leaves, may I request a group photograph of the panel? So can we have a group photograph also? So let's thank Dr. Kumar for that forward-looking and strategic articulation of how India's defense space ecosystem is evolving and the enabling architecture being created by the industry participation. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Kumar, for sparing your valuable time and being here with us. And may I now hand over to our session moderator, Mr. Sandeep Unnithan, to kindly carry forward the proceedings of the session. Over to you, sir. And
Thank you very much.
40 minutes, sir.
Right. I'll finish well before then. So, I was in college in 1991 when Desert Storm 1 took place, the Gulf War, US invasion of Iraq, the liberation of Kuwait. And, we got satellite television for the first time, and we had a window into another world, which is of the future of warfare, where we saw smart missiles taking out the Iraqi command and control nodes, air defense networks, and all of that. Tomahawk missiles became a household name then. And we saw all of this, and I still remember those visuals that CNN was flashing, those greenish visuals shot at night. And all of that was coming into our homes for the first time in a way that warfare had not been brought into the homes of people, especially in India. That was 1991. And now in 2025, in the middle of Operation Sindoor, in fact, just after Operation Sindoor, the ISRO chief made a very interesting statement where he spoke about Mr. V. Narayan, the chairman of ISRO, announced that at least 10 satellites are working continuously and around the clock for the strategic purpose to ensure the safety and security of the citizens of India. Now, he said that when Operation Sindoor was literally underway. And it's very rare for an ISRO chairman to speak about military operations because, in India, we've seen a kind of siloization. Civil is in one silo, military is in another silo. And here, for the first time, you have the ISRO chairman talking about India's civilian space capabilities in being used by the military for the protection of its citizens. So I thought that was a turning point. And because we have Colonel Awasthi here, he's the military man, the only military man on the panel here, I thought I'd start by asking you this, Colonel Awasthi. What is the importance of that statement from the ISRO chairman? Do you think that we are at a moment now in time in India where the three silos of civil, military, and commercial are literally collapsing into one another, and you're looking at the emergence of space as a domain for warfare?
Great. Thank you, Sandy. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, thank you, SIA-INDIA. Sandy, that's a great question. 1991, I used to be in NDA, sleeping on a bench. In those great days when the Gulf War was on, and it was fantastic to go back to the squadron and see the television and see all those green images. I mean, they bring a lot of things to my mind. But, as you just mentioned, 11th May, that was the day when the chairman of ISRO made this statement during Op Sindoor. And, there are four things which now define warfare, if you look at it. So, when you look at the four things, they all fuse into space. The first one is silicon, of course, because I come from that industry. The second is surveillance. The third is stealth. And the fourth is spectrum. All these four fuse into space. And that is how the warfare generally is evolving and will evolve as time goes by. Now, what did he mean, essentially, when he said that, we are looking at 10 satellites, we're looking at the entire, ISR picture, this, that, and the other. So, in the future course of action, you require three things. You need sensors to see, networks to decide, and weapons to strike. That's how it goes. Sensors to see, networks to decide, and weapons to strike. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, all these three domains are controlled by space as we speak today, whether it is by satellites or whether it is by whichever way it is possible. Now, this statement on the 11th of May was essentially a very major turning point in two things, to my mind. firstly, the ISRO chief speaking about the fusion of civil, military, and commercial together. That's a great shift from a pure monopolistic way of thinking of ISRO, if I can say it in a little more polite fashion. And the second thing is he has essentially looked at the prowess of the private sector for which the space is opened and the space it can occupy in the bigger paradigm of things. So while all this has happened, it looks at three things to my mind. One is institutional linkages have broken. Two, you can look at interdisciplinary training between the three silos and the three pillars which you just mentioned. And the third thing is that because now he has said so, there can be best practices for all the three, silos or all the three, pillars of the space spectrum to come together and look at as a holistic national security policy. I think that should be
right. Absolutely. No, fascinating overview, Colonel Awasthi there. And, the fact that we are at a turning point here in India's civil-military fusion, if I can call it that. But I want to bring in Rupesh here. He heads XDLINX. They are a private startup in space. Space was just thrown open recently to the private sector. I mean, I wonder why it took us so long, to get the private sector in. But that happened just about 6 years back. And Rupesh, tell us that, XDLINX, you offer advanced mission-ready satellite platforms for Earth observation capabilities. How are you looking at this challenge of, entering space as a private sector player? And it was really nice what Dr. Kumar mentioned, that those three pillars where he identified the private sector as very, very key for civil military space.
Thanks, Sandeep. Thanks to SIA for having me here. Good afternoon, all. I'm Rupesh Gandupalli. I'm the CEO, co-founder at XDLINX Space Labs. So we are actually a space infrastructure platform company for both bus platforms and the payloads. So we as an industry, right? So if you look at the traditional, say about space as a domain, it's a dual use case. But if you look at like last 2 decades, how this demand is, where that demand is actually evolving, I think the defense and military use case is much more dominating compared to the civilian applications. But of course, civilian applications can be leveraged with the sophistication, what's going to be built and required for the defense surveillance and reconnaissance. As an industry, right? So we, by nature, the technology what is demanded for building the spacecraft infrastructure or launch vehicles is very complex. I think as an industry we can actually work on the design as a starter, the design development cycles. But when it comes to the building and manufacturing and actual testing, right? That's where there is a heavy capex intense establishment is required, where that needs to be something driven by the top down, right? Where because as industry today, if you see it, there are multiple. Today I'm representing the space industry as ecosystem here, but we do duplicate a lot of things because there is no centralized or some kind of platform defined where things can be tested out, things can be characterized to prove that the progress of the technology what's been developed, right? So in this case, the need for this kind of, because by nature the volumes are going up, and then the complexity in terms of the technology is demanded for counter bringing in the ISRS capability, the space situation awareness capability, or the early warning, the EW, because this is all related to the warfare zone, countermeasures, right? So they're twofold, right? Where I do see the need for a kind of a centralized, the military-led infrastructure provided where industry can come in and parts for two reasons. One being, the capex, the level of capex involved to bring in the capability. Second, the use case understanding, right? We come from the technology where we kind of think that we know, but when it comes to the actual testing on the field, we do see a lot of time the delta, right? Or sometimes maybe we're way off from what is really required or what is really that use case meets the criteria. So I think by keeping these twofold, one is that access to the infrastructure, which is the the facilities, and also having that access to the subject matter expertise that actually kind of bring in the the cohesiveness in terms of reducing and also making sure things are actually progressing in the right direction.
Right, absolutely. And a fascinating insight there from the Indian private sector. Dr. Akhil Rao, I have to come to you now for this. There's another milestone actually from 1991 to 2025 in between. It's 2020, and there's a Russia-Ukraine war that started in 2020, and there's one word to capture civil-military fusion there in space-based capabilities, and that is Starlink. So if anyone told you that civil and military capabilities and capacities are separate, I just have that one word to tell them. And today, it's very interesting that both the Russians and the Ukrainians are using Starlink satellites. It's possibly the first time. Starlink has become like the default setting of, it's virtually like GPS now, on both sides using it. But, coming back to India, what do you think are going to be the challenges for the private sector to scale up? It's been just 6 years. Where do you think the Indian private sector is going to be? What are the challenges that it will need to, come up to, say, a Starlink, a Desi Starlink maybe?
So, great question. And I guess first, thank you to SIA-INDIA for having this panel and to XDLINX for helping put this together. So I think at a high level, right, I should say, I'm an economist. I see the world in a very particular way, and so I apologize to all of you for what you're about to hear in that sense. I think the challenge is in transitioning from engineering to economics. And, we've heard through today a lot about policy. We've heard a lot about capabilities, We haven't heard as much about economics. I think there was a previous panel that talked about procurement certainty, right? So let's try to break down, I think, what has made some of the U.S. Space industrial complex so successful, and also some of the challenges there, right? I think there's 3 lessons for India from that experience. One is that you have to have architectural priority. You have to know what your hybrid architecture is going to be. Starlink is, I think, it's very notable, and I would say that it is still in many ways a commercial capability. Starshield exists as the separate military capability. Now, Starshield exists in an architecture. It is part of a collection of elements, some government systems, some commercial systems, that have been planned out to ensure that the U.S. military, the warfighter there, has access to what they need, right? It's very much a make what you can, buy what you must strategy there. Even the U.S. Department of Defense is not infinitely resourced, right? $800 billion a year is still a finite number. And so there's still this need, I think, to be very smart in building the hybrid architecture to ensure that you are if there's a sovereign capability that you want, you need to keep it. And if there is something that you can get more efficiently from the market that you're okay with, then maybe you should do that, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, to this point about procurement planning, you need to credibly signal demand. So I'm glad that you mentioned Starlink here, because I would take us back before the Russia-Ukraine war to how SpaceX got started. Does anybody know what made SpaceX? What was the first contract, the first capability they delivered?
Cargo.
It was cargo.
Cargo,
Yeah, and was cargo for the defense program? No. Cargo was for the civil space program.
Commercial.
It was NASA,
NASA.
right? So I say this with no small amount of pride for my former agency, right? But part of, it's helpful, I think, to think about how that contract was structured. Because everybody looks at the Falcon reusability, they look at the Dragon capsule. Yeah, that's cool. Those are cool capabilities.
Right.
But the CRS, the COTS, the CCDEV, these contracts were structured with effectively certain payments. Once you had the capability, you knew for sure that there was, $200 million per flight that was coming to you at pretty fixed time slots, right? You knew you could bank on that. You could go to investors and you could tell investors that, hey, I'm going to try this thing. It may work. It may not work. But regardless, there is this money that will come in. That is a huge shift from another program, the CLIPS program right now that NASA's running. It does not work this way. There's 14 companies that are in a procurement pool. Nobody knows who will win which contract. it makes it very difficult for the companies to go to investors and say, well, I know that I will have this money coming in with certainty. Bankroll me to take a risk now, right? And so I think that with the development of SpaceX, with that COTS, CRS, CC Dev, those contracts, NASA did a very good job in first paying down a bunch of fixed costs. So I think they covered something like 30, 40% of the development costs. Don't quote me on that number, but something in that ballpark. They transferred a bunch of technologies. So the Pica X heat shield came from NASA heat shields, right? NASA engineers went over and helped them develop it. And then they gave them demand certainty. So that was, that's the second piece, is you have to credibly signal demand. People have to know that they can bank on the revenue so they can make investments, so they can. Anything we can learn from the US experience, from the Chinese experience, and even to some extent from the European experience, it is that consolidation will always come for the space sector. It is an extremely capex intensive sector. There are lumpy and sometimes limited demand available, limited revenues available. These companies will merge. And when they do so, when they vertically integrate, when they horizontally integrate, as a nation, you don't want to be in a position where one company controls too much capability, and as a result, your industrial base is effectively monopolized. That is a very unpleasant spot to be in. And I think that that is a challenge on the one side in managing competition, but on the other side as well. So that's the supply side competition that you have to manage. You also have to manage the demand side competition. So this, and by that I mean that the civil and the defense side, as much as we talk about civil defense fusion, these are two separate sets of programs often. Like Indian Space Station, Bharat Station, that was not, now at least, described as a defense capability. It is a civil science capability. Well, okay, if you want to have a civil science capability, that means that you need to have launch slots that are open for the vehicles that are going to take crew up and down. You need to have crew capability. You need to have some things for them to do on there, experiments and science they can do. All of this costs money. All of this will take attention from companies. And if you are trying to build defense capabilities in that time, you may find yourself in a position like, this has been publicly reported, so I am just repeating the reporting here. But if you look at, for example, the Boeing Starliner program, there are some who would note that while the Starliner program is struggling, the defense satellite programs are not. It is one company. Why would this happen? And one thing that has come up many times as I speak with folks in industry is this perception that within the company, the defense revenues are seen as higher priority than the civil revenues. Right. This puts the civil program in competition with the defense program. And if India follows a trajectory like the US, the civil program will struggle to compete with the defense program for the same industrial base. And so I think that these 3 points, right? You need to have clear architectural vision with priorities. You need to credibly signal demand. And then, finally, you have to manage the competition both on the demand side and the supply side. I think these are going to be the challenges India will face as it tries to scale up.
Right. Absolutely. Fascinating insight there, Akhil. And when you were speaking, I was again going back to Colonel Awasthi, because procurements, Colonel Awasthi, that was your forte in the defense ministry. And in a sense, what Akhil mentioned, the challenges of this space and military silos, they seem to echo a lot of what we are facing on the terrestrial side. I see General Pannu there. He set up the Defense Space Agency. So, we have a lot of military minds over here who've worked very keenly on the space sector. But, tell us whether you see the defense space architecture facing the same problems that we did on the terrestrial side of things, where you're looking at, delayed procurements, resourcing programs, and there's a struggle for, and there's a tremendous amount of bureaucracy involved as well in this. You see the same problems occurring with defense space, despite the kind of priority that has been given. Will it also have to struggle for resources in the Indian context?
Thanks, Andy. That's a very interesting question, actually. And it's an answer that I can keep telling you till the cows come home tomorrow morning. Actually, it's a very complex subject. Procurements and actually a lot of people, even in the echelons, whether it's civil or military, confuse acquisitions with procurement. Firstly, both are not the same beyond a point. The second part is when you're looking at the space part of it and you're looking at the acquisitions part of it, you need to look at 4-5 things from various people who produce these things, or they are aggregators, or they are essentially they are doing something under license or whatever it may be. So the first part is capacities. The second part is funding. The problem in India is that there is no patient capital, as I generally refer to it as a patient capital. You need patient capital to do some high-end, cutting-edge work. So that patient capital in India needs to be formulated at all levels and understood at all levels, whether it's the level of the armed forces or bureaucracy or the space industry or whosoever it may be. Now, the problem stems from various things in terms of gestation periods which are very high. So anybody who's entering the space industry or any high-tech industry, I'm not even talking about only space, all high-tech industries, is that everyone who wants to enter wants to test a business case model. That look, I'm doing this, and will it be a right fit for the market? To look at the, what Akhil mentioned, the demand and supply, that paradigm that, I need to do this, and, I need to manage competition, this, that, and the other. But this may not be possible. Although it is utopian, it may not be possible because of various reasons. So now what happens is that beyond a point, you start writing something like the general staff qualitative requirements. Now, general staff qualitative requirements, everything stems with logic, essentially. So a lot of people have this misnomer that, that a GSQR or a general staff qualitative requirement or whatever you do is to, find out the best in everything. Akhil's tie, Sandy's coat, Rupesh's shirt, and my pen, and you make somebody, which is absolutely modeled like James Bond, and he comes out. Well, it's not that. Actually, the general staff qualitative requirements, logically, to my mind, it's a very personal view, is to make a case multi-vendor. So now, whether, a case becomes a multi-vendor, and then in that multi-vendor case, you're looking at a L1, in which you are looking at technology which has already gone past, because technology cycles move in teraflops. So by the time you're looking at that technology is obsolete. So this is that paradigm, the chicken and the egg issue, which, brings out a lot of problems. And then there's another thing, but that has been sorted out to a large extent. And if I may add, with a lot of pride, it has actually been sorted out to a large extent, because when you look at the procurement cycles, while they are very, very long, there are too many people involved in it. You have the armed forces or the service headquarters, then you have the bureaucracy, then you have the, I don't want to use this word called vendor, but anybody who's producing something, vendor somehow sounds a little obnoxious to me, and various other people who are part of the system. Now what happens is that beyond a point, the timelines overtake the ethos of what exactly is required. Now that is a very major issue, which has now been sorted with the new DAP coming in 2025. And that earlier part, 10, 15 years ago, when, that is the time it used to be called DPP, 2011 and all of that, when got in, it used to be, that tussle of we versus them. That, I have this and you have this, and I have this lever and you have this lever. So that's generally going away. So beyond a point, a lot of things are falling in place, but as they say, it's a slow cycle of progress. So how it goes where, and and especially in terms of high-tech sector, I have always been an advocate of a lot of things, and it, and I've been writing also on that when you're looking at procurement in India or anywhere, you need to look at procurements only for the legacy equipment or for platforms, not for high-tech equipment. Because if you look at procurement for a high-tech equipment, then you're losing the plot. because the technology is going by such leaps and bounds that you are actually losing the plot. So if it is a weapon platform which will say, which has got a life of 30 years, 32 years, or whatever it may be, right? You are doing it fine. There's no problem. You have the due diligence, this, that, and the other. But if you're looking for high-tech things, I think it sounds a little counterproductive to me. I don't know how we can fix it. I have no answer for this.
Let's ask Rupesh this. I mean, Rupesh, you've been there in the sector for what, 3 years now?
Yeah.
How has it been dealing with the military when you're talking of the kind of solutions that you provide, the quick launch satellites with payloads? Do you go through the same procurement cycles? That's one part of the question. The other one, of course, is that, as Dr. Vinod Kumar mentioned, we want to create an indigenous ecosystem when it comes to space. It's absolutely critical, but 80 to 90% of the components are imported over there. Is that a big challenge for you as well, as a defense company, a private sector defense company in India?
Thanks, Sandeep. Just to just pick up that point, Mr. Anurag Ji mentioned about this patience capital, right? So whenever I talk to my investors, like any investors here, so the way I see when people talk about the gestation period and like realization and all, see, unlike the defense, it is like a typical procurement where it has its own cycles and repeatability and keep coming, getting the MOQs and all. See, the space is actually technology, right? It is a technology, it changes, right? By nature, it can't be procured, it should be acquired, right? And also like every technology, any industry develops, it has its own, lifetime. Because by the time we get to the point that technology get tested, if that procurement cycles are not going to help to get acquired, the way Mr. Akhil mentioned, right? The way the whole SpaceX contract was written such a way that there was a motivation where that there was a money put on the table. All that the founders of the SpaceX have to do it, focus, get the funding, and then work on developing the launch vehicle to the point they take it to orbit. Once that they know that for sure, once they take it to orbit, there is a contract already written down where they can just see some kind of a ROI, right, coming back onto that that existing contract, right? And exactly if you look at and again Akhil mentioned about not to leave the monopoly nature in the industry, how US defense supported sustaining the rocket labs as a next the closest industry, competing with the SpaceX this long, right? Whether they have the capacity, demand or not, they kind of committed to that extent where they have kind of acquired some capacity of the launches for few years, so that this capacity can be either the Air Force can be open up to the friendly countries or something like that. So the struggle here is space being technology by nature, not typical procurement, and it has to be acquired in that timeline, because otherwise the technology is getting obsoleted basically. And one of the at least my observation, I mean, not to comment or not to say anything, one thing I do see still people in the procurement process, they want to go by the T1 but still apply L1. It doesn't make sense to me, right? So T1 to get the best, but L1 to actually squeeze it down. So that's where again it's a capital market where we have to justify the gross margins, and we always say that I'm building the greatest thing in the world, where I can see there is a huge potential for the ROIs and all, but we're picking the T1 and applying the L1. Sometimes it really puts in the spot of the industry.
Right, absolutely. Rupesh, I thought, Colonel Awasthi, given space, there would be a certain weightlessness to the bureaucracy there, but it seems that the gravity forces are even stronger in the space sector than it is in the terrestrial sector. But, Akhil, I want you to give us an overview. We're literally at the last few minutes of our very, very interesting discussion. But tell us, what are the kind of measurable milestones you would want to see in India over the next decade if we are to get to this kind of a capability, a civil military capability for space?
So I think there's maybe two classes of milestones I would like to see. One is just on the pure capability side, right? Again, I come from a more civil space background, and I think that there's real value in that, especially for building this complex. There's a shared industrial base. So I think one thing is to continue developing domestic capabilities like launch, like crew capability, continue developing manufacturing capabilities. I think these are super important. But I think there's a second piece of it too, again, just the economic piece of it. It would be great, I think, for the Indian space industrial base to have dedicated national statistics that are tracking what is happening in the space sector. So one of the things that we did at NASA before I left was we developed a manufacturing plant capacity utilization index for the space economy specifically, so that US policymakers could understand how much manufacturing capacity do we have for space economy related things? How much are we using that capacity? How does that varying? How, can we break that down into different components and see if there's bottlenecks, right? Like these kinds of things, this kind of intelligence about the sector, I think very few countries have it. I think it would be super critical for India to develop that kind of capability. Related to that is the ability to translate these metrics into things that investors can use to then make plans and invest. The Indian market is, I think, interesting to me because there are already many very lucrative opportunities for investors to go after in like pure consumer tech. There's a huge market here. There's a ton of people who will buy a thing if you can make like a cheaper cell phone. If I'm an investor, I need to go into the space sector and I need to know that this company I'm putting money into can, deliver a return. Now, the milestone that you might need to do that in India, it will look, I think, very different from how it would look in China or in the US. But I think it would be something along the lines of a form of perhaps government-backed loan guarantee or something like that that would change the return properties of space investments so that in 10 years you are seeing VCs in India saying, okay, the market is not quite as big, but it's not as heavy an ask. The government is here as a partner. There will be demand on the other side. We can keep developing these capabilities. Oh, by the way, I can see in the national statistics that the time is ripe for an expansion of whatever manufacturing capacity, right? Like right now, that visibility, I think, is a little lacking.
Right. Possibly because the sector is so young, and especially when the private sector has just come in. But, Rupesh, I want your thoughts on this. What are the kind of milestones that you would like to see in the next decade for us to actually have arrived here?
Yeah, I think, I moved back from US after 21 years there. So after I moved back, I tried to map how this, it's all emerging defense space, industry, where we're trying to bring in that kind of top-down leadership where some agencies have the clearly defined charters where they own the capacity building in terms of kind of projecting the capacity both the internal and external where this India can actually, I think India is in the greatest situation where by being neutral in nature, right? We should see beyond what Indian capacity itself, where we can actually bring in the defense space diplomacy to kind of bring in the capacity from outside India as well, kind of part of this overall capacity that actually kind of drives the bringing up some kind of organization setup like SDA, like in India, in US, NRO, NGA, and where the funding being there and then the cycles from the time the RFP is put out or the actual specs, more than RFP, the specs are put out, where industry go and demonstrate that they're ready with capability that can actually meet that spec, that can be turned into a proper contract and to execute. I think defense space agencies being one of the very instrumental by nature, kind of representing the TRICE services from from the defense as the space point of view. I think there got to be some strategy where the bring in that kind of a capacity development globally and kind of share that capacity with the industry. So the industry like XDLINX can focus more on building the capability and continue to build the capability and with the minimal capacity where this capability can be operationalized and then gone through the first article cycles to the point that can be scaled up and then volume driven manufacturing with the kind of capacity being built with the thoughtfulness of overall capacity being predicted or managed at the top level leadership.
Right, absolutely. Capacity and capability. And finally, in conclusion, Colonel Awasthi, what do you see as the milestones that you would like to see in the next decade to get the Indian military space ecosystem
Right. Sandy, I have 6 points. Since you've been speaking to both of them, so I've got a little lead time to, gather my thoughts and collect these 6 points. The first thing is very, very profound, which Dr. Vinod Kumar mentioned in his keynote. He mentioned about supply chains. We need to de-risk, decouple, and make disruptive technologies to look at the supply chains. That's part one. Second part is that in the required time frame that you just mentioned, we need to look at very astute talent mobility. Wherever, whether it's coming from outside, whether your guys are going inside, because if you don't have the talent, all this is hokum. It's of no use at some stage in time. While we all keep talking about skill development, this, that, and the other, but if you don't have talent mobility, there is an issue. There's a very major issue. The third thing is that space as a segment requires more inter-ministerial push. It requires more multidisciplinary focus. Not only Department of Space. It looks at METI, it looks at Ministry of Commerce, it looks at MOD, it looks at Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change. I mean, the plethora is huge. So somewhere down the line, this fusion has to take place that, look, it is just not one single agency which is looking after space. More importantly, you require more embedded industry-wide dialogue and consultation while you make, policies of space as time goes by, because the expertise is going to be coming only from the industry beyond a point. And while you may be in charge of making policies, if you are not taking an embedded dialogue, there may be some mismatch somewhere. It's a wild thought, but there's something called the long-term integrated perspective plan of the Indian Army. So there could be a case in point to convert this LTIPP or long-term integrated plan of perspective plan, which is now changed. It's got a new name, into a defense manufacturing or a space manufacturing and R&D plan. It has to be done or executed by local entities in case it's possible. And last, we need a very conducive financial framework, patient capital, as I've been mentioning. And, Rupesh, I think, resonates with me on patient capital. Right. It's not Swiggy. It takes time. It's space. So if you don't have patient capital and you say, kal tak kar do, so how do you do it? So I think with that, I rest my case.
Right, absolutely. Thank you very much, Colonel Awasthi. What a great discussion this has been. I mean, this is one of those things that actually illuminated me in a way I think that Gulf Storm visuals of 1991 did, so 35 years back. And with that, I think we've come to the end of our discussion. Do we have time for one, maybe two questions from the audience? I see one hand. Just one question. Yes, sir.
Sure. Sandeep, I'd like to take on the question you asked Anurag, out of my sheer practical experience of handling 25 desk missions.
Right. Can we get a mic?
Yeah, we get it.
I think CSM of Lima Squadron won't leave me.
Yes, you are my second term. Okay. So anyway, kidding. So Dr. Sudhir is in front of me. When I was in the MOD, I used to speak to him. I walked up all the way to INSPACe, Dr. Rajiv Jyoti. See, it's an ecosystem issue.
Yeah.
The policy is in place. You don't have the Department of Aerospace Design. I told the Vice Chief of Air Force also in MediaWorks conclave 2 months back. So it has to be a national effort, a whole of ecosystem issue. You have the defense space challenges inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister in 22nd October 22. It's going to be 26. Where are they heading? Nowhere. Why? Because the capability lies with ISRO specialists. Indian Air Force does not have specialists to draft the DSQR, what Anurag was trying to hint out. So that's how it is. So unless we get this act together, we see this as a national effort. You saw of building military industrial space complex. Now, when the DRDO reforms were undertaking, still that report, Mr. Raghavan's report has not been, I think it's in the PMO. Now, they left out Department of Space and DST. Now, all these technologies are dual use, space and DST. So you can't have the Defense Technical Council being headed by the Honorable Prime Minister without DOS and DST. So it's actually, to answer the question, it's the entire ecosystem issue which is failing this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And with that, we come to the end of this session. Thank you. Thank you for your time, Akhil.
Thank you very
Rupesh,
much indeed,
Awasthi.
sir. I would request
Thank
Mr.
you.
Unnithan, moderator, to kindly do the honors of presenting mementos to our eminent panelists. We present to Mr. Akhil Rao, PhD, Chief Economist, Rational Futures, former Acting Chief Economist, NASA. We present to Colonel Anurag Awasthi, CEO, Escape Velocity MediaWorks. We present to Colonel Anurag Awasthi. And to Mr. Rupesh G, CEO, XDLINX. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we thank XDLINX for being our session partner. And may I invite on stage Mr. Ravi Alawadi, board member, SIA-INDIA, to kindly do the honors of felicitating our distinguished moderator of this session. And ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite everybody after this for a cup of tea and coffee served in the exhibition area, one level down. The tea break is of 25 minutes. We will commence with the next session sharp at 16:45, requesting everyone to be seated 5 minutes before that. And please do remember the B2B meetings organized by SIA-INDIA in the B2B meeting hall, which is as you move out on the right-hand side. And once again, a group photograph of the panel. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, tea, coffee is served one level below this in the exhibition area. Thank you. And see you back in time for the next session, 4:45 p.m. That is our concluding session of day one.